big fan of superfoods. They're not necessarily affordable for everyone. Not everyone can have a breakfast that's with chia seeds and goji berries and raw cacao and all those things, and that's cool. And there's also the thing that sometimes we want to sit down to a meal. So I do have another program, 5 Days Healing with Everyday Superfoods, which talks a lot about the brassicas, with mushrooms, with seeds, also gets into those sort of high-level superfoods, and the idea is that you can incorporate them into everyday eating. So with these cookies, very similar to the granola recipe, and they can also be made into bars, but we use the oats, we use flax seeds, but instead of chocolate chips, we use cacao nibs. Instead of poppy seeds, we use chia seeds. So it's starting to incorporate all of that in. So the cookies you're going to have today are made with about 5 ingredients. They've got honey, coconut oil, oats, flax seeds, chia seeds, and cacao nibs. And I believe that's it. So it's that simple. They're like my quick cookie. You can mix it up in about 10 minutes, bakes in about 12. You have fresh baked cookies. Another great thing. And we know that when we go into the health food store and we walk out, we're like, I bought 5 things and it was $150. It's because of those processed health foods. I can't even do it. Like gimpy finger. But it's those processed health foods that start to add up our bill. So if we start cooking these things from scratch, not only are we promoting health for our personal health and for our families, for environmental health, compassion for animals, but we're also having compassion for our bank accounts. And then you'll have enough funds to join me in St. Lucia, January and February 2011, Nourish Your Soul holidays. We're going on 1-week retreats. Do you like that segue? Yeah. So that's what I have to present for you today. That's true for oatmeal, for people who can't have gluten. For any of these recipes I made today, you can get quinoa flakes, you can get amaranth flakes, you can get buckwheat flakes. So those can all be used in place of oats. And again, for breakfast cereals, oats are great, rolled oats, because they cook quickly. So again, those flakes work well. But if you have leftover brown rice, quinoa, amaranth, buckwheat, millet, teff, any of those whole grains, non-glutinous whole grains, can be cooked up. I use, a 1/4 cup of grain to a whole cup of water, so it gets really mushy, like a porridge, and that can be used in place for anything. Any other questions? Yes, Evelyn. So Evelyn, who I met earlier today, is asking about kale chips. Kale chips are fantastic. I like to make mine in dehydrator because I tend to burn things. That's why I carry around egg timers so that I always have my timer on. Oh, it's still going. That's why we weren't going to be cooking today. So kale chips, all you do to make kale chips, and they're $7 a bag. They're fantastic. A head of kale, organic kale, is about $1.99 to $2.50 maybe at your farmer's market. You break the kale into pieces. And Evelyn, I do have I forgot to bring my cards here. At my booth, I have cards. On my card is a recipe for kale chips, so you're all set. You don't have to write this down, but I'll explain it anyway. So go to my booth, get my card, get my crispy, crunchy kale chip recipe. You break the kale up, toss it with a little bit of olive oil, lemon juice, sea salt, and put it in your oven at its lowest setting until it gets dry and crispy, and that's all there is to it. I recommend parchment paper versus Teflon, because it will get a little sticky. So, yeah, that's it. And on my website, I did a series, Kale Chips 5 Ways. So there's 5 different recipes for them. There's a sour cream and onion free, sour cream and onion kale chip. There's a nacho cheeseless, nacho cheese kale chip. There's a sort of Japanese-inspired macrobiotic with miso and tamari. And so there's a whole variety at makingloveinthekitchen.ca, which you can get to from meghantelpner.com. Any other questions? Oh, I forgot to mention that. Thank you. I plugged her to ask me that. I gave you a recipe for walnut crackers. It's on the handout, and it's part of, again, my 5 days low glycemic eating program. But I do like to make my own crackers, and again, those ones are with walnuts, brown rice flour, they're gluten-free. You can use egg if you eat eggs. If you don't use egg, on your recipe sheet, I also gave you my formula for egg substitute. A lot of vegans will buy the package that is cornstarch, potato starch, soy garbage. You can make your own egg replacer with a 1/4 cup water, a tablespoon of flax seeds, maybe some arrowroot flour if you have it, ground together. So that's how I make my crackers. It's just processing stuff together, rolling it out thin, cutting it with a knife, and baking it. And it's that simple. And again, parchment paper comes in really handy so it doesn't stick if you're using stainless steel cookie sheets, which I do recommend. But there is a recipe on there, and if you go on my blog in the little search section, type in crackers, there's a one, I think it's snackers and bries because it was all these nuts and vegetables made into crackers. If you make juices, if you're into juicing, the pulp from that can be mixed with some flax seeds and some nuts and rolled out, and that can become crackers as well. So that's a great thing. And again, you can make lots at once. My kitchen is usually a disaster when I'm cooking. I make 55 things at one time, and then you can just freeze it all. And it's obviously nicer to have fresh food, but it's always better to pull food out of your freezer that you made yourself instead of something you got at the store. Yeah? Absolutely. So she asked about making nut and seed burgers using the same recipe. Can it be dehydrated? Yes, it can. Very easily. And that can be dehydrated as well into crackers, raw crackers. Well, it wouldn't be raw because you cook the beans, but if you sprouted them, you could... Okay, so the question is, how long does it take you each week to do this? Thank you for asking that. Next Sunday, I have a workshop called Happy Meal Prep that goes through how... I used to be in advertising. Did I mention that? It's like my brother's like, are you going to have like the ShamWow? I'm like, I should. I do a workshop and I have a program that you can get that talks about how to plan. So my typical recommendation is to take, an hour to 2 hours on the weekend to make a soup, to make a couple dips, to cook a couple different kinds of grains, so that you maybe invest, 2 hours. And once your kitchen is messy, do a lot in it. So you're cleaning up just at once, cutting all your vegetables, washing and cutting all of that in advance, and keeping that in your fridge for the week. And then, so all you're doing during the week is sort of assembling your meal. So you're pulling stuff out, maybe throwing it into the steamer, maybe throwing something into the oven, and then you've, your 20 minutes cooking time roughly where you can change and relax, and then you have your meal ready. So I typically would say maybe an hour to 2 hours on the weekend, then maybe 20 to 30 minutes each day, and then, make enough at dinner that you can take for lunch. And you saw how quick it was to make a smoothie, or if you make your granola in advance, just throwing a breakfast together. The other thing I want to say on the time, people talk about time, talk about money a lot when it comes to eating healthy. Well, when you don't invest in your health now, you will later, and not in a positive way. If you have 10 minutes a day to spend on Facebook, you have 15 minutes to spend in your kitchen. If you have $100 a month to spend on an iPhone, you've got the money for groceries. And that's sort of where I stand on it. Our culture, more so than any other, invests in everything else besides our diet first, in our rent, in our cars, in our clothes, in our shoes, in our gadgets. People are lining up for this iPhone that didn't exist 2 weeks ago. So there's always money, and there's always time for the things you put first. And really, if I can be an example to you, if you're dealing with any health challenges, that, despite what your doctors may tell you, despite what challenges you've gone through, the body has an amazing capacity to fully heal and repair itself when you're feeding it with the building blocks. And that's what whole foods are. We are made from these foods. And so when you can feed yourself with that, and putting the time in and your own energy into the food that you make, it's amazing how much better it tastes and how much better it feels when you're eating it, and how much better you can digest the things you make from scratch. So before I go, I just want to say I have a booth in the international marketplace. It's I Am 12. So you can go pick up your goodies from Sweets from the Earth and New Moon Kitchen. They have delicious cookies and stuff if you didn't get enough today. And come check me out. I do have cooking classes. There's a 6-week program starting in 2 weeks that has just 2 spots left. It's every Thursday night. I do Sunday workshops throughout October, November. They're 11 to 1. So instead of going for your, tofurkey, bacon, and whatever for brunch, you can come to me. I do a sort of song and dance while I cook. You get to enjoy the food. Again, my blog is Making Love in the Kitchen. I have a daily column that goes up there with recipes and nutritional information and ridiculous stories from my life. And again, Nourish Your Soul Holidays, January 23rd to the 30th, and February 13th to the 20th, I lead healthy living retreats in St. Lucia. We stay on an organic estate. Coconut milk is made from the coconut that comes off the tree out the front door. The place is on an organic farm. Everything comes off the farm. I do a nutrition session every day. We do yoga meditation every day, and then we go and visit things like a cocoa plantation, a seaweed farm, botanical gardens, waterfalls. So come join me at my booth. There's lots of info there. You can meet my mama. And yeah, thank you so much for coming today.